I'm Olivia Chen, 28, female. I'm a software engineer living in a city that never sleeps, sharing a sleek, modern apartment with my husband, Alex. For the last 5 years, my life has been a carefully constructed code of late, night work sessions, quiet weekends, and the comforting stability of a man I thought I knew better than myself. But like any complex program, my life had a devastating bug hidden deep within its source code, one I was about to discover after the longest day of my career. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The clock on my monitor glowed too, 17 a.m. I had been at the office for 16 straight hours, fueled by stale coffee and the sheer will to push our new app update across the finish line. We called it crunch time, a period where our lives outside the office simply ceased to exist. My eyes burned, my back ached, and my mind felt like a frayed bundle of wires. All I could think about was sinking into the familiar comfort of home, into the arms of my husband, Alex. Alex and I were the picture of a perfect modern couple. He was a charismatic marketing manager, the kind of guy who could sell ice in a blizzard. I was the quiet, analytical one, finding beauty in clean code and logical systems. We balanced each other. He drew me out of my shell. I grounded his soaring ambitions. We were building a life together, or so I believed. Our apartment was filled with photos of us smiling on trips, at dinners, at family gatherings. Each one was a testament to the life we presented to the world, stable, happy, and deeply in love. He was always so supportive of my demanding career. "I know you're building something amazing, Liv," he'd say, kissing my forehead as I packed my laptop for another long night. "I'll hold down the fort." He was my rock, my biggest cheerleader. When I got a major promotion, he threw a surprise party. When a project failed, he was the one who reminded me that failure was just another data point. Our marriage felt like a fortress, impenetrable and secure. That night, as I finally hailed a cab, I sent him a quick text, "Just left the office, utterly exhausted. See you soon." His reply was almost instant, "Can't wait to have you home. Bed is warm and waiting for you, my hardworking hero." A small, tired smile touched my lips. That was my Alex, always knowing the right thing to say. The thought of his embrace was the only thing powering me through the last dregs of my energy. The cab ride was a blur of streetlights painting streaks across the window. I pictured him asleep, the soft glow of his bedside lamp illuminating the book he'd inevitably left open. I imagined slipping in beside him, his arm instinctively finding my waist and pulling me close. It was this image, this promise of comfort and safety, that I clung to. When I finally unlocked the door to our apartment, an unusual silence greeted me. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a sleeping home, it was a tense, empty silence. I kicked off my shoes, my tired feet grateful for the relief. The apartment was dark, except for the faint, rhythmic blue light pulsing from the living room. I frowned. Alex hated leaving electronics on overnight. I walked toward the light, my heart beginning to beat a little faster. It was his work tablet, lying face down on the coffee table. As I got closer, I saw it was still on, casting a soft glow on a half-empty glass of wine and a single, long strand of blonde hair resting on our dark gray sofa. My hair is black. A cold dread, sharp and unwelcome, began to seep into my bones, overriding my exhaustion. I picked up the strand of hair, holding it up to the dim light. It was undeniable. It wasn't mine. That single strand was the beginning. It was the first loose thread in the carefully woven fabric of the perfect lie I had been living. The fortress I believed in had already been breached, and I was the last one to know. For a moment I stood frozen, the blonde hair a damning piece of evidence in my hand. My mind, trained to find logical explanations, raced through the possibilities. A colleague, a client he brought back for a meeting. No, not at this hour, not with a glass of wine that wasn't his preferred brand. My exhaustion was replaced by a surge of adrenaline. I crept toward our bedroom, my heart pounding in my ears. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open gently, peering into the darkness. The bed was empty, the sheets on his side rumpled, but he wasn't there. My breath hitched. I checked the guest room, the bathroom, his home office. Nothing. The apartment was empty. I pulled out my phone to call him, but then I remembered his text. "Bed is warm and waiting for you." He had sent it just 30 minutes ago. Where could he have gone between then and now? Did he leave right after sending it? The timeline made no sense. I walked back into the living room, my gaze falling on his tablet again. The blue light pulsed like a slow, steady heartbeat. Something compelled me to pick it up. It was unlocked. The screen showed a messaging app I didn't recognize, one of those encrypted ones that prioritize privacy. A conversation was open. My hands trembled as I read the last few messages. The contact name was just Izzy. Izzy, are you sure she won't be home soon? I get nervous. Alex, don't worry. She's stuck in a coding nightmare. Won't be back for hours. I told you, she basically lives at the office. Izzy, okay, I just left. Last night was amazing. Wish I could have stayed. Alex, me too, but it's better this way. Safer. I'll see you at the office tomorrow. We can have a proper debrief. Izzy, can't wait. The final message from Izzy was sent just 15 minutes before my cab pulled up. He hadn't been waiting for me. He had been with her. The warm bed. He'd promised me had been for someone else. He had lied so casually, so effortlessly. My hardworking hero status wasn't a term of endearment. It was a convenient excuse, a cover for his betrayal. A wave of nausea washed over me. I sank onto the sofa, right where the strand of blonde hair had been, and felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the late hour. Every memory, every kind word, every supportive gesture from him suddenly felt tainted. Was our entire marriage a lie? How long had this been going on? Who was Izzy? The questions swirled in my head, a vortex of confusion and pain. I looked around the room at the smiling photos on the walls. There we were in Paris, him kissing my cheek by the Eiffel Tower. There we were at our wedding, his eyes sparkling as he said his vows. It all felt like a movie, a well-acted performance where I was the only one who didn't know the script. The man I had built my life with, the man I trusted with my entire heart, was a stranger. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a new text from Alex. Hey, sorry, just ran down to the 24-hour convenience store. We were out of milk for your morning coffee. Knew you'd need it after your long night. Be right up. The lie was so mundane, so thoughtful on the surface, that it was monstrous. He was creating an alibi in real time. He was treating me like a fool. He thought his code was perfect, his deception undetectable. But he had made a critical error. He had underestimated me. He saw me as the predictable head-down coder, too lost in my own world to notice his. He didn't realize that my job was to find bugs, to analyze systems for inconsistencies, and to break them down until the truth was exposed. The crack in the facade had appeared, and I was going to tear it wide open. A cold, hard resolve began to form where the shock had been. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The game had changed, and I was no longer a passive player. The sound of the key in the front door was a trigger. My grief and shock instantly receded, replaced by a calm, calculated focus. I quickly wiped my eyes, placed his tablet back exactly where I found it, and smoothed my expression into one of weary relief. I had to be the person he expected to see, the exhausted wife, grateful for a thoughtful husband. The performance of my life was about to begin. Alex walked in, holding a small carton of milk like a trophy. He smiled, his expression a perfect blend of warmth and concern. "There's my girl," he said, striding over to kiss me. I forced myself not to flinch as his lips met my cheek. The smell of a faint floral perfume, not my own, clung to his shirt. It was subtle, but to my heightened senses, it was like a scream. "Hey," I murmured, leaning into his hug just enough to seem natural. "You didn't have to do that. I could have survived without coffee." "Nonsense," he said, pulling away to look at me, his eyes full of fake sympathy. "You look dead on your feet. Go get ready for bed. I'll be right there." As I walked to our bedroom, my mind was already working, processing the new data points, the perfume, the casual lie, the confidence in his deception. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a system, a well-oiled routine. He had done this before. The next morning, I woke up before him, my mind sharp despite the lack of sleep. I told him I had to go in early to fix a minor bug from the night before, a lie for a lie. Instead, I went to a nearby cafe with my laptop and began to dig. My first step was to identify Izzy. A quick search of his company's employees on a professional networking site gave me the answer. Isabella Izzy Garcia, a 25-year old junior marketing associate. Her profile picture showed a vibrant, smiling blonde, the same shade as the hair on my couch. She had joined Alex's team 6 months ago. The timeline clicked into place. For 6 months, his late nights with the team and last-minute client dinners had likely been a cover. My specialty is data analysis and pattern recognition. I applied that skill to my own life. I started with our shared accounts. I built a simple script to parse our credit card statements, flagging any charges at restaurants, bars, or hotels I didn't recognize. The results were sickening. Dozens of charges appeared over the last 6 months. Lunches for two at intimate bistros on days I was stuck at work. Cocktail bar tabs from evenings he claimed to be at a networking event. And the worst discovery, 2 charges for a boutique hotel on the other side of the city, both on dates he had supposedly been on overnight business trips. The evidence was piling up, each piece a new layer of betrayal. He wasn't just cheating, he was funding his affair with our money, with the money I worked 16-hour shifts to help earn. The audacity was breathtaking. I needed more than financial records. I needed undeniable proof. I remembered the encrypted messaging app on his tablet. It was my next target. Getting his password would be difficult, but not impossible. Alex, like most people, was a creature of habit. His passwords usually followed a pattern, a combination of our anniversary, a pet's name, or a favorite sports team. I spent the next few days observing, watching him type, noting his habits. I didn't need to see the password itself, I just needed to understand its structure. One evening, while we were watching TV, I pretended to be having trouble with my own tablet. "Hey, can you help me with this?" I asked, handing him my device. "The settings are all messed up." As he expertly navigated the menus, I watched his fingers, noting the muscle memory, the rhythm, the common patterns he used. My best friend, Maya, was my only confidante. I met her for coffee, my hands shaking as I laid out the evidence. She listened patiently, her expression hardening with every detail I shared. "Liv, this is insane," she said, her voice low and furious. "He built a whole separate life, I know," I said, my own voice steady, "but I'm not going to break down. I'm going to finish unraveling it. I need to see the whole picture before I do anything." "What are you going to do?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "He thinks I'm just a coder who doesn't see the world outside her monitor," I replied, a cold fire igniting in my chest. "He's about to find out that I'm the architect of my own systems, and I'm about to run a full diagnostic on his." The thread was no longer just unraveling. I was actively pulling on it, ready to see the entire lie fall apart at my feet. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life to Alex. I was the same devoted, slightly oblivious wife. I was affectionate, asked about his day, and feigned exhaustion from my own demanding job, which provided the perfect cover for my quiet preoccupation. Internally, however, I was an intelligence agent on a mission. Every interaction was a day to gathering opportunity. Every lie he told was another brick in the case I was building against him. My grief had crystallized into a chilling sense of purpose. He had turned our marriage into a project built on deceit, so I would dismantle it with the same systematic precision I would use on a flawed piece of code. My first major breakthrough came from his password. After observing his typing habits, I had a strong hypothesis about its structure. One night, after he fell asleep, I took his tablet into the living room. My heart hammered against my ribs as I entered my best guess into the encrypted app's login screen. First attempt, failed. Second attempt, failed. I took a deep breath, reevaluating the variables. I had the components right, but the order wrong. On the third try, the app unlocked. I was in. It was like opening a secret diary of my husband's betrayal. Hundreds of messages between him and Izzy laid their entire affair bare. They talked about everything. They mocked my work ethic, calling me married to the machine. They planned their secret meetings, laughed about close calls, and discussed their future. The most painful part was reading their conversations about me. Alex portrayed me as a cold, passionless workaholic who was impossible to connect with. He had painted a picture of himself as a neglected husband, a victim, deserving of the happiness he had found with her. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was methodically assassinating my character to justify it. Scrolling further, I found what I was looking for, concrete plans. They were planning a work trip, together in 3 weeks' time, a weekend conference in a city a few hours away. The hotel was booked, the flights were confirmed, it was all there, a neat little package of their deception. This conference would be the stage for my final act. Now that I had the what, I needed to plan the how. A simple confrontation felt insufficient. He was a marketing manager, a master of spin. He would twist my words, gaslight me, and try to manage the narrative until I was the one left looking unstable. No, this couldn't be a private affair between the two of us. He had humiliated me in secret. I needed to expose him in a way that left him with no room to lie or manipulate. His reputation was everything to him, his carefully curated image as a successful, charming, stand-up guy. That was his weak point. That was what I would target. My plan began to take shape, complex and multi-layered. I started by setting up a small, discreet audio recorder in his home office where he often took private calls with Izzy. I also installed monitoring software on our home network. Completely legal software on our home network. Completely legal as I was a co-owner of the account, to capture data streams. It felt like a violation of privacy, but he had shattered that concept long ago. I wasn't a wife anymore. I was a counterintelligence operative in my own home. Next, I reached out to a few trusted friends in the tech industry, not revealing the personal details, but asking for technical advice on a personal project. I needed to create a platform to present my findings, something clean, undeniable, and easily shareable. I started building a simple, password-protected website, a digital portfolio of my husband's infidelity. It would contain screenshots of the messages, copies of the hotel and restaurant receipts, audio clips from his calls, and a detailed timeline of the affair, referencing everything with his work calendar and our shared social calendar. Maya was horrified and impressed in equal measure. "Olivia, this is meticulous," she said, looking at the flowchart I had mapped out on my whiteboard. "He's a marketer," I explained, my voice devoid of emotion. "He deals in presentations, narratives, and brand management. So I'm going to give him the most compelling presentation he's ever seen. His brand is the perfect husband. I'm just preparing for a hostile takeover. I was the architect now. Not of software, but of a controlled demolition. I worked in silence, gathering my materials, building my case, and waiting for the perfect moment to execute. The silence in our apartment was no longer empty, it was filled with my purpose. I was designing the system that would bring his world crashing down, and he was completely, blissfully unaware. With the conference weekend fast approaching, the final pieces of my plan began to lock into place. Alex was more cheerful than ever, buzzing with anticipation for his trip. He told me it was a huge networking opportunity, a chance to land a major client for his firm. He even bought a new suit for the occasion. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. "You're going to be amazing," I told him, helping him adjust his new tie in the mirror. I looked at our reflection, the handsome, ambitious husband and the supportive, loving wife. "A complete fiction. Knock 'em dead, honey. Always do," he said with a confident wink, completely oblivious to the double meaning of my words. The day he and Izzy were set to leave, I put the core of my plan into motion. The target audience for my presentation wasn't just Alex. It was everyone whose opinion he valued. His professional world was built on a foundation of perceived integrity. I intended to shatter it. My first step was to identify the key players. I compiled a list: Alex's boss, the head of his department, the entire marketing team including Izzy, of course, and a few of his most important clients, whose contact information I had found in his unsecured files. I also included our closest mutual friends and, most importantly, his parents and my own. They all deserved to know the kind of man he truly was. The website I built was now complete. It was elegant, professional, and devastatingly thorough. The landing page was a beautiful photo of Alex and me from our wedding day with the simple title, "The Alex Project, a 6-month review." The navigation was simple: timeline, financials, communications, and exhibits. Each section presented the evidence I had collected in a clear, irrefutable format. The audio clips were embedded, the receipts were scanned, and the text messages were screenshotted and arranged in chronological order. It was a masterpiece of organized betrayal. On Friday morning, just as Alex and Izzy would have been checking into their hotel room together, I scheduled an email to be sent out. The subject line was neutral, following up on Alex's Q3 marketing project. The body of the email was short and professional. "Dear colleagues, friends, and family, for the past 6 months, Alex has been working on a highly personal project, and I felt it was time to share his results. His dedication and commitment have been truly remarkable. You can find a full presentation of his work at the following link. The website password, a simple, memorable password related to our life. I believe in full transparency and thought you would all appreciate seeing the true scope of his endeavors. Sincerely, Olivia Chen." I scheduled the email for 4:00 p.m., late enough in the workday to cause maximum chaos, but early enough that people would still be at their desks to open it. With the email armed and ready, I moved on to the next phase, securing my own future. I had already met with the divorce lawyer, who had reviewed my evidence and assured me I was in an extremely strong position. I quietly transferred half of our joint savings, my half, into a new private account. I packed a suitcase with my most important belongings, important documents, and my work hardware. That afternoon, I drove to Maya's apartment. We sat on her couch, my laptop open, the scheduled email visible on the screen. "Are you ready for this?" she asked softly, her hand on my shoulder. "There's no going back after you hit send." I looked at the screen, my finger hovering over the mouse. For a fleeting second, I pictured Alex's face, the good memories, the man I thought I had married. A pang of sadness hit me, the last ghost of the love I once felt. But then I pictured him lying to my face, using my hard work to fund his affair, and mocking me with another woman. The sadness vanished, replaced by the cold steel of resolve. He had built a glass house around his lies. It was time to throw the first stone. He's been living in a world without consequences. I said, my voice steady. I'm not destroying his life. I'm just turning the lights on. At exactly 4:00 p.m., the email sent. The stone had been thrown. All I could do now was wait for the sound of shattering glass. The first notification came at 4:02 p.m. It was an alert from the website's analytics, showing the first visitor had accessed the site. Then another and another. Within 15 minutes, dozens of people were on the site, the digital equivalent of a crowd gathering. I could track their movements, seeing which pages they clicked on most. Communications was unsurprisingly the most popular section. My phone started to buzz at 4:10 p.m. It was Maya's, then my own, a flood of texts from confused friends. "Liv, what is this website? Is this some kind of joke?" Followed by, "Oh my God, Olivia, I'm so sorry. I'm reading it now." The first call from Alex came at 4:15 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. He called again instantly and again. The calls were frantic, desperate. After the 10th missed call, a string of texts began to pour in. "Olivia, what have you done? Take it down now. This is insane. You're ruining my career. You're ruining my life. Pick up the phone, Olivia." I watched the messages come in, feeling a strange sense of detachment. It was like watching a bug in a program finally cause a system crash. It was chaotic, but it was the expected, logical outcome. The real fireworks started when his work colleagues began to see the email. An old friend of mine who worked in a different department at Alex's company sent me a text at 4:30 p.m. The entire marketing floor is silent. Everyone is staring at their screens. Alex's boss just walked into his office and shut the door. Izzy ran to the bathroom crying. The most significant call came around 5:00 p.m. It was Alex's mother. I decided to answer. "Olivia, what is going on? We got this. This website," she said, her voice trembling. "I know, Eleanor. I'm sorry you had to find out this way," I said calmly. "But everything you see on that site is the truth." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, the sound of her world shifting on its axis. "That boy," she finally whispered, her voice thick with disappointment. "I am so sorry, my dear, but the true confrontation was yet to come. I knew Alex and Izzy would be in a panic, likely driving back from their conference immediately. I wanted to face him one last time on my own terms. I sent him a single text, 'I'm at the apartment. We need to talk.' When he finally arrived hours later, he looked like a ghost. His face was pale, his expensive suit was rumpled, and his eyes were wide with a mixture of fury and fear. Izzy was not with him. How could you?" he hissed, his voice cracking as he stormed into the living room. "You could have just talked to me, you could have screamed at me, but this was public execution." I stood calmly by the window, looking out at the city lights. I didn't turn to face him. "You're right," I said. "It was a presentation. You're a marketer, Alex. I thought you'd appreciate a well-executed campaign." "A campaign? You blew up my entire life. My boss called me. My parents, they want me to seek help. Izzy got suspended pending an HR investigation. All because you couldn't handle this like a normal person." Finally, I turned to face him. My expression was calm, my gaze unwavering. "A normal person? You mean I should have cried and yelled while you calmly explained how it was all my fault? How I worked too much, how I wasn't present enough. I read the messages, Alex. I know the narrative you were building. I just decided to present the raw data instead." He was speechless. For the first time since I'd known him, the master of words had none. He just stared at me, seeing me not as his quiet, predictable wife, but as the architect of his downfall. "You're a monster," he whispered. "No," I replied, my voice as cold and clear as glass. "I'm just a very good engineer. I found a critical flaw in the system and I removed it. The apartment is yours. My things are gone. The divorce papers will be sent to your office, or what's left of it. Goodbye, Alex." I walked past him out the door of the home we had shared and didn't look back. I didn't need to. The presentation was over. The project was complete. The system had been rebooted. The weeks following the final presentation were a strange mix of chaos and liberating peace. The fallout from the website was immense. As predicted, Alex's professional life imploded. His boss, a family man with a strict code of conduct, fired him for unprofessional behavior and misuse of company resources. Citing the affair with a subordinate and the evidence of him conducting personal business on company time, Izzy was also let go. The clients whose trust Alex had cultivated for years quickly distanced themselves from him. His carefully crafted brand was toxic. Our mutual friends, for the most part, sided with me. The evidence was too overwhelming, his betrayal too blatant to defend. A few tried to play devil's advocate, suggesting I had gone too far, but they were quickly silenced by the majority who saw my actions as a justified response to an extreme level of deceit. My parents were furious on my behalf, while his were deeply ashamed, offering me their unwavering support. The divorce was swift and uncontested. Faced with the mountain of evidence I possessed, Alex's lawyer advised him to agree to all my terms without a fight. I didn't ask for much, just what I was legally entitled to, and for him to be out of my life for good. He sold the apartment to cover the settlement, a final, symbolic dismantling of the life we had built. I moved into a new place downtown, a bright, airy apartment with large windows and a view of the skyline. It was smaller than the one Alex and I shared, but it was entirely mine. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I poured my energy back into my work, not as an escape, but with a renewed sense of passion. The long hours I had once spent building someone else's dream were now dedicated to building my own. My team at work, who only knew that I was going through a tough divorce, rallied around me with quiet support. Maya was my rock through it all. We spent weekends hiking, trying new restaurants, and just talking. Do you ever regret it? She asked me one evening as we sat on my new balcony, watching the sunset. The way you did it. I considered her question for a moment. I regret that it was necessary. I replied honestly. I regret the man I thought I married never actually existed, but I don't regret exposing the truth. He operated in the dark, thinking no one could see him. I just turned on the lights. What happened after that was a consequence of his own actions, not mine. Months later, I heard through the grapevine that Alex had moved to a different city to try and start over. He was struggling to find work in his field, his name now attached to the scandal that anyone could find with a simple online search. The website was long gone, taken down the day the divorce was finalized, but its impact remained. Izzy had apparently moved back in with her parents, her promising career cut short before it had even truly begun. I felt no satisfaction from their misfortune, only a quiet sense of justice. It wasn't about revenge in the end. It was about reclaiming my own narrative. He had tried to code me as the villain of his story, the cold, absent wife. I had simply debugged his program and presented the facts. My life now is clean, logical, and efficient. It's my system, running on my terms. The pain of the betrayal has faded, leaving behind a stronger, more resilient version of myself. I learned that sometimes the only way to fix a corrupted system is to delete the bad code, wipe the drive clean, and start over with a better, more secure operating system. And that's exactly what I did.